Thank you so much, Dan. Hopefully, this encourages all of us to think about how we can unlock not just our human advantage, but also the advantages of others around us as we go throughout the rest of the day and hear from an amazing lineup of speakers. Amazing. To kick off our first panel, I'm really excited to introduce Trending Tech, When to Wait, Watch, and Act. In this panel, we are joined by Kunal Anand, who is the CTO of Imperva, Faus, who is the Global Field CTO of GitLab, and Vijay Kotu, who is the SVP of Analytics at ServiceNow. And it will be moderated by Mike Grandinetti, who is a faculty member at Brown, Harvard, and Rutgers University. The panel will showcase what these senior leaders are thinking about current technology trends, going back to first principles to figure out what may or may not affect their careers or organizations. And the session will cover security and privacy concerns arising from new developments in technology, investing in people and technology, and leading through times of uncertainty. Without further ado, let's welcome the panel and our amazing moderator.
So first of all, as a Decode board member, I want to welcome you to our annual conference. And I'm really impressed that you were willing to spend time indoors with us on this extraordinarily beautiful fall Saturday afternoon. So it says a lot about your growth mindset, okay? So we're going to get into a subject that is near and dear to my heart, which is around tech strategy, okay? And it's an auspicious time to be here because on Monday, there will be a session held right here with the Satarja Center on Emerging Technology Week. It's a brand new program out of the Satarja Center. And how many of you are here for that program? I understand from Vicky Howell, there's about 10 of you perhaps in the room right now that are here from the program. So welcome, okay? And so Silicon Valley has always been a mecca for people that wanted to understand technology strategy, right? People come from all around the world, make a pilgrimage here. Why? Because this place is a crystal ball. If you want to look into the future, this is the place to do it, okay? Like none other in the world. Now, technology strategy, first of all, it is insanely challenging, even for the best and the brightest. And the consequences are dramatic if you get it wrong. So imagine that you invest massively too early. Let's think about Meta with mixed reality, right? How many billions of dollars has Meta written off over the last few years because they just really went for it? But to be too slow also has significant consequences, okay? Which relegate companies to the dustbin of history. So there are certainly frameworks that we can look at that can be helpful. We can look at Amara's Law, a law I'm sure most of you know, and we'll certainly get into that a little bit. We can look at the 3 horizons of growth portfolio management strategy. We can look at scenario planning and future casting. And we can certainly look at hype cycles like the Gartner hype cycle, right? These are frameworks that are very helpful, but it requires a lot of judgment and experience and certainly a lot of luck. And fortunately, we have 3 amazing panelists, all from very different backgrounds, all with decades of experience managing technology strategy for their respective companies that are going to share their insights and their wisdom and their tips. And so with that, if you would be so kind, Vijay.
All right, this is Vijay Kotu. I run data analytics and AI for ServiceNow. Some people ask me, I don't know much about the company. It's a company that no one knows about, but pretty much all of you are using it at UC Berkeley, right? So our mission is to make the world of work better. And work, usually in an organization, is about processes and workflows, and we are passionate about improving the outcome of those, may it be a step function, or as Dan mentioned, 1%, 2%, right? So everything counts. So that's what I do at ServiceNow.
You've been there for 5 years?
I've been there for 5 years, yes. And before that, I was at Yahoo.
Yeah, okay. A long history in the Valley?
Yes,
Yeah.
2 decades here.
Great.
Hi, my name is Kunal Anand. I am the Chief Technology Officer and the Chief Information Security Officer at a company called Imperva. For those that don't know, Imperva is about a 20-year-old organization focusing on cybersecurity, specifically in the domains of application, and data security. Prior to Imperva, I had started a company called Previty. We were the leaders in an area called runtime security. We were acquired by Imperva in 2018. Prior to that, I co-founded another company that was acquired. And prior to that, I was the director of technology at the BBC. A little bit unique probably among my peers here. My degree is actually in quantitative finance and economics. And my first job out of college was at NASA, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, where I worked on the Mars rovers.
Very obvious connection.
Yeah, very obvious. I came up in an era where things like Google didn't quite exist. And my now wife, girlfriend at the time, would literally drive me to Barnes & Noble. And all I had was a pen and a pad. And I literally taught myself how to write C, C++ just by handwriting it. Going back to the lab and trying to like copy pasta, what I had handwritten, this chicken scratch, to get code to like execute and run. And so I have a lot of appreciation for being here. To me, it's an honor and a privilege to be in front of you all talking about innovation and technology. So thanks for having us.
Great. So my name's Lee Faus, Global Field CTO at GitLab. Been at GitLab for 2.5 years. My role at GitLab is both internal and externally facing. So I interact with our product and engineering teams internally as a leader, and then I focus externally as an influencer to our customers. So providing roadmaps, being able to tell them sort of what we're seeing with other customers, things like that. Before GitLab, I worked at a company that probably most of you use here in the computer science program. So I worked at GitHub. So I was at GitHub from 2014 until they got acquired by Microsoft. I tried to work at Microsoft. I made it about 6 months.
Not long.
I made it 6 months. Going to Redmond and realizing that, you know, I'm sure that most of you will end up in a job somewhere where you will learn that you go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting. Well, at Microsoft, you have to go from meeting and then you have to have a break because it takes you an hour to get from building to building. So you can't go from meeting to meeting to meeting. Before that, I actually started off my career very similarly, not in tech. I'm actually an educator. So my degree's in secondary education. I ended up with a minor in computer science by accident. And then I ended up being a teacher at the high school level and then an adjunct at NC State University.
Right. So lots of unique degrees on the panel, which is really a perfect starting point for this question. I wish more people in Silicon Valley would study history. And the reason I say that is because if you look at this extraordinary boom and bust cycle over the last 40 years, right? This amazing level of hype around just, you know, fill in the blank. Is it XR/AR? Is it Web 3.0? I can't tell you how many of my students, you know, started Web 3.0 startups, right? Many of them are probably not in those startups right now. And so we're hearing so much about generative AI, right? It is just beyond impossible to ignore. And although a lot of people say it's different, it's hard to imagine that any new technology is not going to go through the classic Gartner hype cycle and at some point lose a lot of its luster and, in the words of Gartner, go into the trough of disillusionment. But yet on some level it does feel different. It does feel like it's more accessible. The adoption rates are much, much quicker than anything I've ever seen. So with that, I know all, and one of the things I've really asked my panelists, I don't want three guys nodding their heads in agreement with one another, okay? That's boring for all of us. So I want them to take differing points of view. So Lee, I'm going to start with you, and I want to go back to the discussion we had as we prepared for the panel.
Sure. So when it comes to generative AI, again, being both internally and externally facing and being in a global role, when I go and I talk to companies in the US, everybody's, when's GitLab coming out with their generative AI features? Then I'll go talk to companies in Germany or in France or in Italy, and they're telling us, hold off, we're not ready yet. There's this thing called GDPR. There's data regulations that we have to adhere to. And then I'll go into APAC, and they look at generative AI as a potential leveling feature. So where they want to compete on a more global stage, they see generative AI as a way to be able to get them to be, like, if I'm a bank in Singapore, I could be seen as a Bank of America or a Wells Fargo. Then internally, when I have to feed that information back into our engineering teams, we really don't have specific requirements. When we talk to our customers, they're like, just make our developers more productive. So when we look at that, there are so many areas of productivity. Is there anybody in the audience that is working for a company right now that is writing code or writing code on a day-to-day basis? Okay, we've got some. So if you were, I'll put it a different way. So you're in your computer science class, and currently you're collaborating with your classmates on a project. And let's say somebody all of a sudden throws in an additional 6,000 lines of code into a PR. How long is that going to take for you to review? 6,000 lines of code? I mean, that's a lot of code to review. So when we start talking about productivity, it's really hard for us to figure out inside of generative AI, we can do things by being able to break that code up. We can do things by being able to push that off on an automation tool like continuous integration, pipelines. We can do some things on the security side. But right now, we just can't get customers to really put their finger on, is it just code generation? Is it going through the pipeline? Is it being able to provide when I've got something that I'm finding on the security side in production? And that's a challenge that we're having right now, is not only globally with where our customers are at their position in the hype cycle, but then being able to figure out on the product side, what things do we build for those people today that's going to make them achieve those goals?
So a little bit of skepticism, a little bit of hesitance, and yet, Kunal, you are, first of all, trigger warning, the man is a quote machine. So I do hope the New York Times is in the room.
Not at all.
But you are seeing something fundamentally different than Lee.
Yeah, so let's kind of go back. I've been doing this for a while now, and to the point that you brought up, there have been lots of ebbs and flows in technology. Remember, just look back 10 years ago, there was the dawn of, the cloud, and obviously that's not a trend, that's here. But then shortly after that, it was crypto. How many people remember crypto? Right? For 110 years, he'll remember that one, right? But if you kind of think about it, why didn't crypto really take? Use cases, right? There was a lot of money that went in, and there was a lot of speculation, but it didn't deliver on an outcome. The difference with AI is that it actually has already started to deliver on outcomes. That's a fundamental and a stark difference compared to what we saw in comparison to things like cryptocurrency. And I'm not dogging on crypto. Maybe there will be use cases and outcomes that it can develop or that I think it can deliver on years from now, but it's not there yet. But with AI, we're totally seeing it. And because I live in the world of security, there's an awful amount of asymmetry that I see. I have to stop attackers, and I have to stop them in milliseconds, and they can prepare their attacks for years. So just think about that asymmetry. How many people here, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows this term, how many people here know what a CAPTCHA is, right? You have to click those annoying bicycles, you're training Google's, I'm sorry if someone is from Google, but you're training, Waymo or who knows what. But what's really profound is our own research team literally took those CAPTCHAs, took a screenshot of it, went to ChatGPT, not the paid version of GPT, but the free version of GPT, and we said, where are the bicycles in this 3x3 grid? It got it 100% of the time, over 100 times. That's incredible. And today, attackers are employing human farms in places like Southeast Asia, predominantly Vietnam, and they're spending thousands and thousands of dollars a month paying people to try and break CAPTCHAs. They don't need to do that anymore. Okay, so there's this asymmetry that's happening, and so what I'm hearing about now is customers that I talk to are saying, okay, we're really worried about these new types of threats that are emerging. We're worried about advanced ransomware. We're worried about bad bots trying to break into things. What are you as an organization going to do to stop that? And what's amazing is it's not actually the more progressive tech companies that are asking me that. It's places, I traveled to Singapore. I was in the Middle East not too long ago. I'm going to countries and I'm going to regions where I have people asking me, when are you going to stop or when are you going to assess if this is an AI-oriented attack or if this is an attack that was crafted with some form of AI? And so because of that, I am forced to and we can talk more about it as we go from a strategic perspective, but we're investing heavily in AI, not because it's a fad or it's a trend, but because I can probably deliver amazing outcomes in terms of efficiency internally, but I can also improve my products to stop these bad actors and keep everyone here in the room and their businesses and their organizations safe.
What's amazing is, right, you talked about the government of Singapore that you were with, government of India, so many late adopter organizations, right? The Mayo Clinic is really pushing on this hard, right? So a lot of regulated industries, a lot of very slow moving laggards seem to be catalyzed to move much quicker than they ever have.
I'll give you this. And this is the most profound thing I've heard in the last 2 weeks. More compute will be deployed in 2024 than all the prior years combined. Think about that. More compute is going to be deployed next year than all of the years in computing.
There's a tip, buy some NVIDIA stock at the break.
All semis. No, but it just speaks to the point that this is not a fad, right? When you have that level of investment that's going in, clearly there are outcomes, and there are outcomes that can benefit lots of organizations.
Now, Vijay, I think you certainly work with large enterprises, right? And a lot of what you do is very much mission critical. And yet it appears to me, based on our discussion, that there's a high level of experimentation, a high level of curiosity to bring ChatGPT or Gen AI in general into these enterprises and at least experiment. So can you share your perspective?
Absolutely. So hype cycle. You talked about hype cycle. There's something fundamental about not just technology, but finance. It's going to be boom and bust. It's a kind of way of creative thing as well. So it's okay. It's always going to be hype cycles there. So the way we think about it is fundamentally we are running a business, and what is most important for our mission is to run work better for every organization. And is there any way that we can use all of the above in the hype cycle if that is going to be helpful to solve our fundamental problem? And yes, this new wave of AI, not just Gen AI, it's the fad, but AI, it is going to help our mission, our business mission. So we are bullish about that. So we created products for our customers so that they can run their processes more efficient, whether it is using Gen AI, it's traditional AI, or even simple math, it doesn't matter. Those are all the ways how it delivers to our mission. So when we talk to our customers, absolutely, they are interested on how they can optimize their operations process so they can deliver their business value to their customers. So this is changing. And everyone has a mandate as well from their company. They're seeing pressure on how they can optimize their business. So they're relying on those optimization techniques. And whether that is Gen AI, regular AI, it doesn't really matter, right? So we are actually very bullish. And even internally, we are running a business as well. We are optimizing our own processes. So we are applying various methods of Gen AI and AI.
So let me now talk. So again, as technology leaders within your respective companies, you have been charged with the very challenging job of managing technology strategy, okay? And we all know, as companies get bigger, they become more sclerotic, more bureaucratic, more political, and much more risk averse. And as a result of that, many of them are paralyzed around taking risks on new technologies, okay? And this is a course I've been teaching forever, and you know, I've studied this for a long time. The number of companies that consistently get this right are very small. Now, when we had a prep call, Kunal, you shared with me your approach, which is an insanely aggressive, thoughtful, and I would say textbook approach that I teach. And it was also catalyzed by a private equity firm, which is not typically where you would expect to get tech leadership from. So can you share a little bit about how everything changed for you and your portfolio, you know, and all the portfolio companies under Thoma Bravo on a very auspicious day when you guys were all called together to refactor everything?
Yeah, totally. So I don't know if everyone in the room knows, but you know, when you think about building and scaling and really growing companies, you can get capital from a lot of places. There's the venture world where you have an early stage idea. There is the public markets. You take a company public, you do an IPO, you raise money publicly from retail investors, and then you can also seek capital from private equity. And these firms usually have a thesis. They amass a large amount of capital. Imperva is owned at the moment by a firm called Thoma Bravo. And Thoma Bravo is, when you kind of peel it back, is one of the largest cybersecurity firms owning very, very big cybersecurity organizations. They reached out to all the CTOs in the portfolio, and this isn't just 5 companies, we're talking dozens of companies in the portfolio. And they reached out to us and they asked us, okay, leader, how are you guys thinking about AI? And how are you thinking about investing in this technology? And more importantly, what is your 90-day plan? And I thought that was amazing. I've started companies, I've worked at publicly traded companies, I've worked at venture-backed companies, I started a venture-backed company, and never have I seen that level of engagement before when one of these sea changes happen, right? I was there before cloud happened, and then when cloud happened, it's not like a venture investor said, hey, you should take a look at this thing called the cloud. Meanwhile, I have someone at a private equity firm calling me up and saying, all right, this is game-changing for all of us. What are we doing here? And it could be maybe for efficiency purposes, it could be for building better products for customers, but they genuinely asked us that question. And we had to produce a document. I'll never forget having to write that document. It was a 10-page document of how we're thinking about leveraging this technology internally, whether it's for eking out more efficiency, becoming more productive, or how it's going to be something that could benefit our customers. What can we tangibly put into our products to make things better? Not just from a leadership perspective, but really practically, like, how are customers going to get valued, and how is this going to be accretive for everyone involved? And I love that forcing function, and I love the fact that they genuinely went out to organizations. And it's shocking because I talk to my peers, whether they're in publicly traded companies or whether they're in venture-backed companies, and they haven't had that phone call yet.
Yeah.
And it's really surprising that a lot of people are having to kind of think through it from first principles, but to your point, a lot of these big companies are sclerotic and they don't get there.
Yeah, Tom Davenport, a prolific writer on data science and AI, put out a paper a couple weeks ago saying, something to the effect, are boards of directors kidding themselves? That they give themselves this extraordinarily high level of, ranking, kind of like cardiologists. We're all in the top 1% of our field, right? They all said they were experts in generative AI, right? It's like, okay, that's good to know, right? And so, it's just amazing to me, right? So they just feel like maybe it's just simple, I don't know, right? And they'll figure it out on their own. Now, you are customer zero, right? So ServiceNow is customer zero, right? For your own innovations. And as you shared with me, right, you don't allow technology to head fake you. You're looking at, does it solve a problem or not? If it doesn't solve a problem, I don't care if it's been on the cover of People magazine, okay? I'm not gonna invest. So talk about this very complex organization and how you as a leader and your peers think about making technology strategy work.
Actually, to follow up your comment on the prior question, so pretty much the customers that we are dealing with, large organizations, they have board mandate right now. Right. They're getting the call, not from the C-suite, actually from the board. Like, what is your Gen AI strategy? Well, that's just a fad. Well, we'll talk about what is the overall AI strategy, right? So, which is great place to be in. This is also one of the reasons why they're expecting AI to be implemented in many parts of the organization and how we can help as a business as well. Yeah. So we have thought about many different products and services that we can offer. But the first thing is we wanted to make sure that it works internally first. Yeah. So we call this as customer zero. So we will try out the products to make ServiceNow as a company work better. And if it works, then we can launch it internally, externally, right? So that is the strategy that we have taken. And there are some experiments, probably out of 100 experiments that we run, probably less than 30 actually works, which is, I think it's a great hit rate. And some things doesn't work, something is like mediocre, so we can figure out what works and really position for our customers there. Example would be Gen AI. We started experimenting, when someone is actually in a customer support call, you all have been there, right? On what happens on the other side of a phone call would be that agent trying to resolve a case needs to document something on how the case went. And by the way, when 10 agents are doing the same thing, and perhaps it's a new issue for the business, and we can extrapolate what's going on with those 10 agents, and then we can create a knowledge base article which is going to be used on your self-help. Right? This entire value chain can be completely automated. And right now, we don't actually have enough people to create those knowledge articles. Right? So now this is something, a great application of Gen AI. But the problem is, when we went with this internal use case there, the case summarization or something, that's not in the critical path of that agent's job. So it's not much value to be received in some business, but in some other business, for example, banking and financial industry, by regulations, they're supposed to actually summarize everything, document everything. That's a great use case that we're finding. So experimenting many things internally actually provides a better chance for us to see which one works, which one doesn't work. It's almost that portfolio approach that you talked about.
Okay, we're going to need, how many minutes we have left? Like 2 or 3? So we're going to have lightning round, 2 minutes. Lee, starting with you, you had some very novel ways. So what I want to ask, right, Kevin Roos, I don't know if anybody knows Kevin Roos. He's the primary technology reporter for the New York Times, and he leads one of the podcasts I love, which is called Hardship, right? And he was quoted as saying a couple weeks ago, he gets paid to keep up with this, and he can't keep up. And I would agree. I've never seen anything moving so quickly. So 1 minute each. How do you keep up? I know you had a very novel approach with your daughter. Please.
So I have 2 daughters. One just graduated from college. The other one just entered into college. And as I was trying to figure out where they get their information, they were sharing with me that they get all their latest updates on TikTok. So I sat there, me being Gen X, I'm like, no, I'm not going out there. And lo and behold, I started doing some searches on TikTok. Yeah. And I've never been one that, like, I could listen to a podcast for like 5 minutes, and if I didn't agree with the opinions or things like that, I might continue listening, but I have a tendency to stop them short. And I don't listen to them all the way through. Man, you know what? I can go through and swipe through a whole bunch of opinions on TikTok, going across VCs, going across industry leaders, going across all kinds of different topics. If you build the right feed, and that's what I've learned to do, is being able to make sure that my For You page is now aligned to people that I follow that are all in the tech space and things that I'm interested in. I can't tell you, I can sit waiting at the airport and go through in 15, 20 minutes and just scroll right through them.
All right, so I got a guy who loves to speak the truth, and you specifically, deliberately do not read VC blog posts.
Not at all.
Why? We have VCs in the room, so...
Because they're always pumping their books.
Trigger warning for VCs in the room.
Because VCs are always pumping their books.
Okay.
I mean, ultimately, they're always pitching their own products, their own investments. I'm sorry, but I have no patience for that. I want to think from first principles. Like when GPT-4 came out earlier this year, the first thing I asked myself was, okay, this is just source code. Let's go read. And fortunately, I don't know, show of hands, how many people have heard of the name Andrej Karpathy? For those that don't know, Andrej Karpathy is incredible and effectively led AI at organizations like at Tesla. And he has this incredible series, and he ended up building things like Micro GPT. It's just a few hundred lines of code on GitHub. Go read it. Yeah. And so for me, I rather just go to the sources, learn it, understand it, and if I don't, ask questions, and instead of reading blogs and other things. Because again, I don't want someone pitching their products.
Cool. Vijay.
All right. Similar to what Kunal said, I'm not into jumping on every single hype cycle. And what I think what I've learned is being really understanding what the real business that we are solving, the real problems that we are solving, and is any of those technologies going to solve that problem? Usually I get it from teams, our customers and our partners, to see any of those new things that we are talking about is going to solve fundamental business for us, right? So less worried about what's happening every day.
All right. So it's a Saturday, it's a beautiful Saturday. You guys have a lot going on in your lives. Vijay, Kunal, Lee, thank you so much for making the time. We're going to now have a breakout session. I don't know, I'll let the Decode volunteers direct everyone to the room, but we're looking forward to meeting with some of the students.
We have a Q&A.
Okay.
10 minutes Q&A.
Oh, we're going to have Q&A. Beautiful. Wow. I did not realize. Okay, so we got 10 minutes of Q&A. So let me leave that with you.
Hey, nobody prepped us for Q&A.
I know. Let me grab one of those. All right.
You need a chat GPT to answer it? Or?
Spicy hot takes.
We've got some really smart guys up here, so who has the first question? Don't be shy. That's why we're here. Beautiful. Always need someone to break the ice, right?
Hi, my name is Jackson, and I was wondering, what is a lesson you wish you'd learned earlier on in your career?
The one thing that when I graduated from college, I thought I had all the answers. I thought I was prepped, everything. The one thing I would do is find a mentor. Find somebody that can help guide you through the hard paths. And then once you've passed the knowledge of that mentor, go find another mentor who can guide you.
Take it. Okay, so Vanessa over there, Reese? Yeah. Raise your hand.
So,
And by the way, why don't we get another perspective while we're transferring some
so
transition?
many problems that we face in real world doesn't need complex solutions. It might be very, very simple solution. The objective is not to implement solution X, Y, Z. The objective is to solve a problem, and that might be very, very simple.
For me, I wish someone had told me that most of the struggle is in here. When you build a company, and many of you, I've had some conversations already this morning, you're already entrepreneurs or you're on your way to be an entrepreneur. You're going to go and solve some hard problems. You're going to face adversity. And most of the time, what you're feeling is just a natural cycle of emotions and your brain thinking through things. Try not to overreact to that. I know it's hard to say that, but try to remain calm as you go through those things, because we're all going to go through that. Oftentimes that struggle's in here and it's not necessarily out there in the world. So always try to take a step back and kind of look at the forest for the trees.
And for me, don't just look at the prestigious brand name companies because they're prestigious brand name companies. Be self-aware about who you are and the culture that you're going to thrive in, and thrive in that culture. Okay, so many people go for the big McKinsey name or the Goldman name or whatever it is, and they just don't fit, and they're miserable. You don't want to come out of the gate with a bad experience. Okay, all right. So Reese.
How's it going, everybody? My name is Reese Gardner, and the question I have for the panel is, you guys touched on both generative and traditional AI, so I wanted you guys to kind of go in a little bit of depth about the similarities and the differences between the two, as well as the best applications of both, and how can we optimize kind of our process in that.
All right, that's a great question. So traditional AI, it's mostly just math, a complex way of math, and but there is a last mile problem in traditional AI. And as Dan said, last mile problem actually usually gets, if you solve that, usually gets all the attention, and that's what AI is doing. It's almost last mile problem. The way I look at Gen AI is it's a translation. It's translating something to simple English to math, back to simple English, or it's translating English to code, or English to circuits, English to workflow, or English to molecular thing, that biotech. So that translation is really changing the game right now, because it's making things more accessible. Anyone can do it, anyone can code. So just widening that overall opportunity there. So that's what Gen AI is actually different. At the end of the day, everything is AI. This is no different than, I don't know if you watched this movie, 2001 Space Odyssey, HAL, right? It's pretty much the same thing what's happening in the movie, right? And it was done like 40 years ago. So,
So one of the things that I've learned very quickly is when it comes to AI has predictable outputs, where generative AI is non-deterministic. So anybody here who is building a prototype or doing anything on top of generative AI, and you go out and give a demo to a VC, to a customer, to anything, you can go run a prompt one day, and the next day you come in, you're gonna get a completely different answer. And it really depends on which model you're using, it depends on which version of the model you're using, depending on the context window. And because of that, there's still so many unknowns that it makes it really difficult to realize what those outputs are. When we look at doing AI just in general, like I can talk to a bank about quantitative analytics and things like that, and how you can use AI in some of those models. When you ask them how they would apply that to generative AI, they're like, we're not touching generative AI for typical math type problems. Back to the math versus words and pictures.
We've gone from statistics to machine learning to deep learning to AI. Just a lot of words for fundamentally things that are pretty straightforward and what we've been doing for a long, long time. A lot of the theory that we're doing right now is well known and has been well known for decades. The thing that I would encourage everyone to go take a look at, it's a YouTube video called Sparks of AGI. I don't know if you've seen that, it's incredible, but the fundamental difference between now and back then is we're actually loading this technology that we've built, these algorithms, with just an imperial ton of data, right? We didn't have that data before. We were building these algorithms and we're using things like generative AI in the past or generative algorithms, but we weren't getting quite near the output that we're getting today. But what happens when you actually crawl the web and give that giant corpora or corpus to something like a GPT? What happens when you actually give these trained algorithms a lot of data? That's what's, I think, unique, and that's what's different now. And that's why you see people talking about the size of the model. That's why people are saying, oh, it's a 10 billion parameter model. Okay, I get it. It's because that has something to do with the quality of the output on the other side.
Are we doing on time? Do we have time for one more question? Oh, yeah, last question. Who wants to get the last question? Yeah, please.
So guys, my name is Danilo. I'm from Brazil. I just arrived here 2 months ago. But my goal here is living here right now because I was in Brazil working as a software engineer, and my career during there for 15 years, working inside the banks, all of the banks and this payment systems. I have a lot of experience in financial markets in there. And then when I was here last, okay, all right. So I built my app to help people manage their money, and then so I'm doing nothing with AI generation so far. But everybody asks me about how you're doing with AI. I am using just to inside my develop process. How you say Copilot, GitLab, every process inside my process build is I am doing with the GI. So I have to change my business proposal, maybe to think about the GI to offer some services about this, or I can just do in my business plan without the GI generation.
I think that would be best discussed in the breakout session, because I just don't think it's a question that's universally appealing to the whole group, and I just think we've run out of time. So let us kind of have a sidebar on that, okay? All right. So I think we're out of time. So first of all, thank you all again for joining us at Decode Annual Conference, and thank you one last time to my great panelists. Great job, guys.